Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Miss Justice Renée right over here, who is a member of the Secular North and also a producer on other shows and stuff, too. So if you were interested in finding out what the Secular North is all about, there is a link to it below, and it's got all their podcasts and shows and stuff listed there. And apparently, there's a page for me now.
Yes, there is. We've got a page for you. You do such
That's
good
awesome.
work.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. It actually makes me feel really good when I hear stuff like that. And apparently, our fashion coordinators didn't quite tell us that we're both wearing the same outfit today. So
Shannon Q, here we go.
Exactly. Good old Shannon. She's amazing, by the way. She represents the other side of Canada. See, I get the West Coast. Shannon gets the East Coast, right? So, and Paul now too, because he lives with her. So,
oh wow,
the big move happened. Mr. Star Wars himself. Anyways, just as you know what I do here, I chat with people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they were once a part of. Let's get my whole head in here. There we go. And basically, I ask people to take us back to when they were sort of deeply involved and how those dominoes fell, and you finally, found your way out of it. You dug your way free from the chains of theism, we'll say. Mm-hmm. And you were a minister too, if I'm not.
Yes, I was.
Oh, see, there's like 5 hashtag coins right there in a row, people. That's the drinking game here, folks. If you see that, and you heard the noise from my phone, you take a sip.
Coffee and wine.
Wide awake drunks, right on.
The only way to go.
Unfortunately, I can't really drink a lot, so I'm saving my beer for the after party because I'm on blood thinners right now because I have a potentially lethal thing called DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis. It's a blood clot in my leg. The swelling has gone down very, very much, so we are on the right track. Anyways, so tell us about your journey away from the beliefs you once held.
Well, I guess, this is awkward for me, and I'm like very quite nervous. A story I haven't shared with a lot of people. But so just to kind of give you have to understand a little bit about my family, my background, and where I come from. Sure. So I was born in Utah in the 80s, early 80s. And my father and my family were very evangelical, living in a town of 99% Mormon, which always is quite interesting. My father is was an engineer for Boeing and was a sound engineer. Cool. So very brilliant man.
Bill Nye was too, right?
Yeah. So he designed the shaker. He designed a lot of the shaker systems for testing like nuclear weapons and things along those lines. So he's really one of those people that's very smart, very well read, had a humongous library, introduced me to logic and how do you put things together, the Socratic method and everything along those lines. At the same time, he was a 6,000-year-old creationist.
Oh, geez. Yeah. I'll never understand how those can meet in the same brain.
Mm-hmm. So my father led the creation science movement in Utah, was one of the big leaders of the movement over there, putting on conferences in Ogden at a large church in the early 90s when I was 10 years old. And then later on at the Hutzman Center with a couple thousand people showed up for Ken Ham in mid-1990s. So that's the background that I come from, is a very Christian, very fundamentalist background. You talking about, we mentioned Ken Ham, right? So earlier you and I were talking about that, and just kind of, creation science is something that was deeply steeped in my thought processes and the way I put things together. And whenever I would try and question reality, I would look at who was the smartest person in the room, which was my father, right? Yeah. And here he was, very well read and very well understanding this stuff, and truly believed all of this stuff. We had Ken Ham stay at our house a couple times. We were very connected to the Morris family. Ken Ham gave me a game when I was 10 years old from that he made in Australia, and I then played that with Dwayne Gish.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mr. Gish Gallop himself.
Yes, Mr. Gish Gallop himself. And those are things that I remember, as were at the time very quote unquote positive elements of, this whole family, this whole connection, this whole interface and everything along those lines. As a kid, I was born trans, and that's me. That is who I am. Mm-hmm. And that is not well accepted in the communities that I was very much a part of. Not in any way.
Yeah.
No. And so I heard many times over and over that people part of the LGBT community deserve death. My parents got very deep into the satanic panic of the early 90s, very touched it into focus on the family.
Mhm.
And so the situation was quite interesting. So when I hit puberty, I felt completely and totally broken in
Mhm.
many ways, not understanding who I was. And I truly believed that God was there. And I was being told that who I wasn't not only real, but a deep sin and against God and
Oh,
connection
boy.
along those lines. So at 13, I dedicated my life to God and to ministry. I joined working with Child Evangelism Fellowship, did stuff with Awana. I went all around the nation with Child Evangelism Fellowship in my teens and early 20s, ministering and running 5-day clubs and doing a lot of things because my faith was what I felt would save me. It was a sense of purifying who I was inside. So
Mhm.
what I felt inside was so wrong. And the way I did that is, maybe God will let me go to heaven if I can be the best person ever.
Right.
Yeah. So keep
It
going.
just seems to me that if you go by the scriptures that have the adage of God creating us in his image, actually it says we shall create them in our image originally, by the way, which means that there were other gods, but that's a whole other thing. If we go with that, then you were created in his image, right? Or its image. I guess it really doesn't have a gender at this point, but they seem to think it's a him, but that's okay. Then there's nothing wrong, right? Then you're
Correct.
made, right? So how did you square that in your head?
Well, when you're being told that who you are is a sin, right?
Mhm,
Then that's
mhm.
the way you end up accepting. It's an indoctrination as a child, and
Sure,
you
okay.
just totally accept it.
But
That's
that
so
can't
even
be
if
good for you.
no, well, and then that actually gets to the reason why I have the logo the way that I do, and
Right.
where I come from. So, as a kid, I couldn't rectify who I was. I couldn't understand what was going on. I felt really different. I felt really awkward and really weird. I struggled with gender,
Right.
and I would get into the cycle of putting on women's clothes, enjoying and feeling very happy and comfortable, then automatically feeling deep shame and internal regret for who I am as a person.
Wow.
And then getting into suicidal ideation, cutting. And then to rectify myself with the suicidal ideation and the cutting, I would then go deeper into Christian ministry because
Mm.
that would be the way that would save me. And so I would then dive deeper into doing things like more 5-day clubs or working more with the church or something along those lines. At the age of 14, I read The Scarlet Letter.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
The Scarlet Letter had a significant impact on my life from a connection perspective because what I
No, really.
saw was who I saw me. And while I
Reflected
didn't
in the book, right? Yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
and I didn't understand, right? And I didn't understand all the elements to it,
Mm.
but I got tied into the symbol.
Right.
And in fits of shame, I took a knife and I carved an A into my arm. And
Yeah.
would every time that I would struggle with who I was, I would then recut the A into the arm. And that was part of my way of adapting and dealing with the shame of this is who I am. This is what God says that this is an absolute sin. I'm an abomination. I'm hiding myself underneath this mark that is now on my flesh. No one else knows. And I
Mhm.
use that as a form of cutting and moving forward. Um, and I did that until I was 17 or 18. At 17, I got kicked out of the house and I went to Bible college. And I realized at that point I couldn't keep some of this up. And so what I did is I figured out a horrible ideation in my head, which was that I was trans. I was struggling with who I was. And I didn't see any hope or life for me. So what I did is I said, well, I'm going to, I can't commit suicide, because if I commit suicide, that means that I won't
It's also a sin.
go to hell. Yeah, exactly. Right. I'll go to hell directly. So what I did is I planned to go out on the mission field. And so I started training to go to Indonesia. The plan was to never live past 35.
That was your plan? That
was my plan. And I adapt that, and I built it up. I even said I was going to be the bachelor at the college. I was going to be the whole 9 yards at the college. This is who I was. And then I was going to go out and be the most strong person for reaching others for Jesus Christ and sharing my testimony and sharing that connection with them. I was going to change the world, and then that would save my soul and let me connect on in. And if it didn't, at least I'd be dead by 35.
So what made you think you were going to be dead by 35?
Well, that was my plan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's the internal struggle, and the internal situation was I was going to burn out and go to the mission field to be persecuted and to literally go put myself in harm's way. And unluckily, this is a very common narrative for a lot of people who deal with trans ideations and who you are, right? If you're trans and you're struggling with this and you're trying to hide it and trying to be these things, well, what do you do?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I'm sorry, this is getting a little deep, and so that's why I want to jump to the really fun shit. So, but
no, I understand for sure. And I can't imagine what you went through while you were there and doing that. But it seemed like, I guess that seemed like the best way to do it in your head was to go there and to be persecuted.
Correct.
That to me is just like mind blowing. Like I can't imagine myself being in that mindset. So I'm like so sorry you had to go through that sort of shit. If I could reach through there and give you a great big hug, I would right now. Even though you're wearing the same outfit.
I know. So when you're dealing with that, right? I went to a college out in Wyoming, Frontier School of the Bible. I took mission trips. I actually organized and led mission trips to the 2002 Olympics down in Utah. I ran several child evangelism groups, went around to Miami and Kansas City, and then a couple other areas that I was doing during that time. And then did some work down in Guyana as well.
Oh, wow.
With one of the groups that was tied to the group. And at first, I can't speak really well.
Trout mubbles.
It just comes out weird. So at Frontier School of the Bible, I met a woman, my partner, who I deeply, absolutely love and very, very much connected with her. And I had, again, never planned on getting married. I struggled with who I was. I struggled with all the identity shit and everything else that comes with that. But I didn't want to lose my best friend. And so she remembers, right? I actually had a whole long conversation with her. Would she be willing to marry someone or be connected with someone and go to the mission field with someone that was willing and ready to die by 35? And that was an actual conversation we had a couple times, and we ended up getting married because we believed so much that we were going to do God's work and go out and be missionaries and everything along those lines, because we wanted to be connected. And then at that time, this is when I stepped into how do we get there? Well, we got to do some fundraising and things along those lines. So I worked as an assistant director at a Christian camp. I did a lot of jobs. That's what I do. It's kind of, I did a lot of tent making, if you remember the phrase tent making, for anyone who knows that.
I do.
I was a youth pastor at a church in Nebraska and did a couple sermons during the interim between their minister, and ran a couple of the programs along those lines, and kept the church going when they were doing in between two ministers. And I was working at a camp out there in Nebraska, and just really put my whole things. And so when we talk about, did you really believe this shit? No, I truly, really, really believed this shit. And the smartest people I knew told me that this was real. Yeah. And I could find every bit of the data points, at least within my narrative, to back my belief systems up. So it had to be true, regardless of how I felt as a person, regardless if the data seemed like it was inaccurate, regardless if evolution seemed to be more of an accurate model than creationism.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I had and every person I was with gave me this model.
Wow. That's what's, it's frustrating because you have people that are actually in the sciences, yet they still believe the other stuff because, they of course were told that it's the word of God and it can't be wrong. But there's got to be some weird dissonance thing going on in your head when you're reading about stuff that people are discovering about the world around us, like evolution, like cosmology and stuff like that. And none of it jives with what's in the book. Like, like a short circuit shit must be going on inside there. Yet they seem to suppress it and maintain the false beliefs that they were already carrying. So how did you finally sort of see through that? Like, the old I always like to use the Wizard of Oz analogy because it's like you're looking behind the curtain. Yeah. And once you've seen that, although I have known people to look behind the curtain and still go back. But anyway, once you've seen that, in my head, that's it. It's over. It's like finding out all the magician's tricks. Now it's just no fun anymore. So how did you yourself kind of deal with that? Like finding your way out once you started knocking those dominoes over?
So luckily it took a little longer than that, and which is unluckily the situation. So like I married my partner. I got we were doing ministry. I started working with a mission agency by the name of Cross World. They were the ones that I was going to go to Indonesia with. Yeah, exactly. They used to be UFM way back in the day, but so I got connected with them. We went out for a connection to actually plan out the trip. They recommended we had a very, very young child at the time. My wonderful firstborn, just absolutely amazing kid, and I love them so much. But they said it's time that you need to take some time for your family first, and that was probably one of the best things that happened to me, but also one of the hardest things that happened to me. Okay. So they said, what you need to do is you need to go create funding. So go continue working the church system, the church circuit, bring in more money, right? More money, more coins. And then, but, go take some time for your family. Because I had been literally going nonstop, literally from CEF, Child Evangelism Fellowship, Awana, doing all these things with Camp Rock, doing things with the churches. I had not spent hardly any time with my family. And it had created like this rift between my partner and I. And that was probably really good advice. We didn't know what to do. I knew that I needed to move away from Nebraska because people were asking me to pastor and to help their congregation. I had multiple speaking engagements coming up. And so we were like, well, if we're really going to take this seriously, because we really want to go overseas, and that's my biggest goal of everything I'm doing, then we need to actually separate. So I moved back to Utah at the time. And ended up in Twin Falls, Idaho, due to jobs and transfers and trying to actually live. The roof that we were living in this apartment in Bountiful, Utah, and the roof fell in on us. And
oh, joy!
Yeah, we were so. When my partner and I got married, I was making $4,000 a year because I was doing all the ministry. Yeah, and the way I made that was by hauling dead pigs. I would go and I worked on did dead haul for a pig farm. And we hardly had any money whatsoever. And so when we moved to Utah, I was getting a career. I was trying to say, okay, so what do I do to fund and take care of my family? I can't take waiting tables anymore. I can't do things along those lines. Oh, wait, I may be a little bit good with computers. Not sure where that brain came from, but so I got a job down there, but this was minimum wage. And so we lived in this apartment and it was a horrible apartment. But we got out of that. I moved on to working at a company in Twin Falls, Idaho. And this was right around 2008, 2009, right at the housing crash. And you got to take and this is where the story gets really, it goes down a cliff. And I apologize a little bit because I'm going to try and bring it right back up right away. But
well, it's like a roller coaster, ups and downs, right?
Yeah, I know. So my when I got to Twin Falls, Idaho, my father, way back in the day when I was a kid, you had this evangelical side, right? And how you deal with evangelicalism and the connections and everything along those lines. Well, many times that ties into your political systems as well.
Yep.
And your conservative belief systems. And I was very much exposed through talk radio. When you're in Wyoming, bumfuck Wyoming, and you have nothing to listen to on the road while you're hauling dead pigs, literally, you might end up listening to, Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck, and that be the only thing that is in your ear. That is the din of knowledge that you now have.
Great.
Yeah. And so when I got to Idaho, here I was still very much devoted, but I had lost this huge side of my life, which was ministry. And I was doing things like helping some of the schools in the area and some of the churches in the area with their technology. And I was volunteering and stuff, but I was missing the whole, how do I lead? How do I step forward? And so in 2008, when the crash happened, I formed a Tea Party movement out there in Twin Falls, Idaho, that grew, and we had several conferences and things along those lines. It was called Tears of the Patriots. It's gone, but that I got deep into it, and that's how the narrative started to change. Okay. So while I'm in there and I'm working with these individuals, we were doing things like talking about, you talk about Project Blitz, right? Well, the early parts of how you handled Project Blitz back in the day were actually started many times by the Tea Party groups, and some of the ideas and some of the foundations for these. So in my group, I still remember, unluckily, them way too well sitting in a room and discussing, okay, so we're going to move you into this district. You're going to work with this precinct captain. If we put enough of our representatives in this county, there's only 3 people that live there. So if we put 4 more people in there, we now manage that precinct. And if you manage that precinct, then you manage who's actually on the ballot for that area. And you get into all sorts of control elements for how you actually take over things. And talking about, okay, so, we don't have any money. How do we deal with money situations? Well, we deal with certain things we don't want to be on the books for this. We want to talk about how we hide some of the stuff. Let's talk about militias. And so I got really connected in with the religious right. And I got, unluckily, we'd go out, we'd do exercises, out below. It was in this gorge down off of Twin Falls on how you do these things, and paintball and shooting, and how you actually do the exercise, and then how do you do it from a political perspective. I ran a conference for constitutional thought, and did this whole thing. I was the main speaker at the event. And so that was the huge cliff that I got to. So you take this Christianity going into this thing, which led me directly into some of the more violent aspects of Christian nationalism and the connections with it. And at that point, there was this amazing person that I was working with. And I'm a Linux engineer. I live on Breathe Linux. If anyone does that, that's me. I build my own kernels. I have my own build chain and everything like that. But the person who got me into that was, here I am, a basic engineer who has no skill set whatsoever, was this amazing person by the name of David. And he was a pagan.
Okay.
And he believed in a literal Thor. Wow. Yep. And that person was the most Christian person I had ever met.
Or what you'd expect from a Christian, right? Yeah.
And it didn't mesh with my worldview.
Weird, eh?
Yeah, it threw me for a loop. As a kid with Child Evangelist Fellowship, I remember leading this book club, and these kids came to me and said, well, there's this family that's witches over across the road. This is an apartment complex. And, I was like, well, you can't associate with them. That will send you to hell. And, getting into this whole thing about paganism, and, that they are horrible people, because that's what I truly believed. And that's my narrative that I came from. And then I meet David, where I have no say, right? Of, how I can, connect with them. And they're teaching me how to do technology, doing like really crazy shit. Like, how do you deal with CPU failures when you block off a single pin? And it's just really nuts, fun conversations of how you actually troubleshoot and how you build these tool chains and everything like that. And they were sweet. They were kind. They accepted me for who I was. They showed me love in a way and an ethic that was, how do we actually get shit done and really work in this very ethical, positive manner? Where on the side, here I am working with Christians who proclaim their Christian life and everything they do. And they are trying to take over precincts, and they are talking about how they need to stand up for their rights. So we need to talk about violence. We need to talk about these things, right? It just didn't jive. Something felt wrong, and I could explain it. So like I studied apologetics in college, and I could talk to you about why that was the case, right? And I could give you the Christian. I want to say the F word so fucking bad, and I just did. Oops.
That's okay. You're fine as long as we make it past the first. I don't even care. Like half my videos are like might be monetized. I don't even give a shit. So basically, I do these because these are important stories to tell, and I don't really care about all that. It's not about that.
So here we go. We get this whole situation, and right, I'm struggling between the two and putting these narratives together. And I knew how to do it from an apologetics perspective, but something felt off. And because now it was an emotional connection, right? If you can't be reasoned in, if you can't be reasoned out of something that you weren't reasoned into, right? And so here I was starting to see this conversation, starting to see that this narrative is wrong. And so what I said is, okay, I'm going to approach the Bible the same way that I have approached every other book. When I read the Bhagavad Gita, when I read the Quran, when I read all of these books, I had a very apologetics perspective and a very, let us approach it logically. And, how do we break it down with the fallacies? And here's what's wrong with this, and breaking this stuff down. But I never did that with my own faith. And that's when I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to try this because the Bible's true. And the Bible's so true that I'm going to apply the logic that I know that my father taught me, this man that I knew what he was talking about, at least I thought he did, and putting it there. And it started to fall apart. I lost my job right after, in August, we lost a baby at the same time due to a miscarriage. And to get a job back, I had to move to Oklahoma. And you'll notice that moves form delineation lines in my life. So by moving to Oklahoma, it got me out of the group that I was in. And it forced me, because I had then lost now my Christian influence over here. And then I lost my political influence of how I was going to change the world through my political desires for Christian nationalism. And I had none of it. I had none of the friends. I had none of the connections. I had nothing. I just had a job, and I had my partner. We lived in this apartment that was covered in recluses, and it was scary. It was all sorts of things. Yeah. But I had the opportunity at that time to go, okay, so I have nothing else to do. I'm going to actually dig in and I'm going to study this. And so I started to read. I reached out to my pastors. I reached out to my all of my former professors. I read every book I could get. My father was sending me book after book after book to show that it was true. And it didn't work. And it took me 8 years. It wasn't a fast thing. That's something that I've really come to the understanding, and why I think conversations like this is important, and the stuff that you do on your show is so important. And I can get really excited about this. So I'm going to be very careful not to go over the rails on this.
That's okay. No rails included.
Yeah. Just one moment. Yeah. So can you give me just 1 second?
Sure. Gesundheit to whoever that was.
My partner's in the other room, and she wanted to watch this, so I apologize.
Oh, that's Quite all right.
Okay.
More than welcome to watch.
No, she's really enjoys your content.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. So you get the situation where you're now examining and you're now digging in, and something didn't make sense. And Pelagia and a lot of these individuals, right, ended up being a part of that journey towards the end. As I was coming out of it, right, back towards you start to hit about 2015, 2016, which was about 8 years after the fact. 7 years, 16 is when I really had. Yeah. So, yeah. How do you deal with this shit? And okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep digging in. We're going to keep troubleshooting. We're going to try to understand this material. And it didn't work. And I was at a conference. I was a Red Hat conference in San Francisco at the time, right during Pride. And I absolutely refused to go out during this time. But I was in the hotel room and just reading everything I could. And I finally said, I can't do it. I just can't do this. I can't rectify either. Reality is completely and totally true, right? Everything that we test, everything that we see, right? We understand that evolution fits from these specific perspectives, right? We understand how this works. Or everything in my head is a lie, right? Everything I see is a lie in the world. And, you get that from ministers sometimes where they tell you, well, just believe. Yeah. Just have faith.
Which
have
gets you nowhere.
Faith. And, well.
How often does faith actually lead you to truth?
Faith deceives.
Oh, more so than not. That's why it's called the faith virus.
Yeah. Faith deceives you because you believe that you have truth finally and that you can hold on to this truth. And I couldn't. And so at that point, I sat there. You talk about conversion stories, right? Where you sit on the edge of the bed and you say, oh, God, save me. It was the exact opposite. It was like, I can no longer do this. And I'm going to have to step away. And so I did. And I started reading more books and going back to the data and doing some more deeper understanding. I didn't tell anyone because to tell anyone that I'm actually, it was a struggle to actually even tell my professors that I actually questioned this stuff. Because as soon as you start to admit to many of the Christian groups and specifically the fundamentalist communities and the stuff that you do, they cut you off. They separate you from the rest of the people because they're afraid that your faith, your questions are going to corrupt their flock.
But they most likely will too.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's going to be some that you can't convince them, but but some will be like, wait a minute, what she's saying is making sense. What's going on?
Yeah. And I was just asking questions and trying to understand it. But like, you study the data and so many people lose their spouse through all of this. And the amazing thing is my partner was going through the same journey. We just didn't talk to each other about it because we were so scared that we were going to lose each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we were on this trip to we dropped our kids off at their grandparents' house and we were driving and we finally just, it all came out. And we both said, you know what? I don't believe. What? You don't believe? I don't believe. What? and we were able to stay connected and it like grew. So here we were, when you talk about the first, are we supposed to drink now?
Yeah. Well, Mikey's kind of goes away from the table once in a while, so I got to hit the coins button.
So here we were, right? I started from my first, right? We had been through so much family therapy and couples therapy and connection therapy and how we do all this stuff as Christians. We tried to live the Christian life. And not only did it not work, my partner will tell you, right? Trying to follow the Christian life was just like damaging our relationship, trying to be the perfect wife really, because I didn't act like a man. I wasn't a man. It was never connected in that way, in that mindset. That is not the way my brain is wired in any way whatsoever. And it literally was driving our marriage off a cliff. And we were at the place in where we were at when we were having that conversation. I wasn't sure that we could even save it. And when we talked about the fact that the two of us were losing our belief system and connection, it then opened up stuff, and it opened up cans of worms and conversations and building the conversations and see how we make these connections and draw the lines and everything along those lines. And we started building because we were now being honest with each other, and we were communicating with each other, except about one thing.
Okay, hold on. Do you find that the two of you coming together on this whole lack of belief in what you used to believe, or you're losing your belief in that?
Yeah.
Did you find that helped you bond a little bit, or were there
like nobody's business? It caused us to have a situation where, hey, we've been not talking about this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What else are we not talking about? Right. Can we talk about this stuff? And then also got rid of the facade of, you must be the Christian man. You must be the Christian wife. And it changed the narrative completely. It allowed her to start to be herself. And it allowed me to start to go, well, how do I actually be myself?
Yeah. Another journey you got to take now. Yeah.
So we hit that place, and we're having this conversation where we get through there, and I was honest about all of that, but there was one area that I wasn't being fully honest about, and because I felt, again, right, you grow up believing that you're destined for hell, you grow up believing you are an abomination, you grow up cutting an A into your arm as the one way that you can rectify the pain inside your heart because of this.
What did the A you were carving stand for?
Well, in the Scarlet Letter, it stands for adulterer. And I felt that I was
I didn't even make the connection. I feel dumb now.
Yeah. So you're not dumb in any way whatsoever. I just had this whole long conversation. They're like,
totally didn't make that connection. And now it makes a lot of sense. Yes.
Well, people looked at my symbol on my name, and they automatically go, oh, that's the Atheist Day. And I'm like, no, it's not. Let's have a talk. Let's talk about it.
Pull up a stump.
So let's talk about this. So here I was, I felt this shame. I felt who I was, this abomination. So even though I had dropped the facades of Christianity, I was still struggling with this in the closet. And here I am sitting right now at 35. Mm-hmm. And I had sworn that I would never live past 35. And it hit me like a lead balloon. And so while our relationship and the connections we had and the relationships we started having with other people started to grow, and we started to be able to be honest about so many areas, the stress and the anxiety of the whole situation started to really take a toll on who I was. I ended up in the hospital with blood pressure of 170 over 110.
Oh my goodness.
Ended up in the hospital for other issues for multiple days. Because they put me on every heart medication they possibly could. I was on ACE inhibitors, amlodipine, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
And the best I could get was my blood pressure down to 130 over 90.
Wow.
And that was a chore. And usually it would be like 110, 140, 150 over 110 and everything like that. And the stress, the anxiety of being trans and everything along those lines wore heavily on who I was. And then you get another delineation line. We moved to Minnesota. Mm-hmm. I had to move. It was the first time we'd actually moved. So I'd been moving for work and to take care of my family and everything along those lines. You follow the jobs, you follow the money. And this was the first time that I could actually take a job that wasn't for, just the money, right? I could actually take my family to a better place. The schools in Oklahoma were 49th in the nation. We were, we were struggling with a lot of the stuff in the area. So we were like, you know what? We've always wanted to move to Minnesota. It was either that or Austin, Texas, actually.
Austin's amazing.
Austin is, but it's too hot.
Well, yeah, there are times. Yeah.
It was either there because I worked for Dell at the time, right? And they wanted me to come down there or go up north to Minnesota to work with a different company. And that's what we did. we moved to Minnesota because that was what we were looking at, and it actually helped. It allowed us to actually start to ask even more questions, right? Because now we're there. I'm still dealing with the blood pressure problem. I'm still dealing with all the issues, but we started to move from the angry atheist phase, right? Posting and being angry about who I was, the factor that I had been lied to for so long, and feeling all the shame of what I had done, right? If you'd been in ministry that long, I still had people that would reach out to me. And, here I was, I had been the one who had led them to the Lord. I had been the one that was their pastor. I was the one that was the connection for them. And they were now seeing me as the antithesis of what they were as. We lost connections with them all. We lost friendships. We lost a lot of stuff throughout this whole stuff, right? And you're then feeling like, how do you rectify those things? Moving to Minnesota helped us. So in Minnesota, we were able to create a clean break from, again, where we had previously been. And we ran into a group. It is not a church, but it is a Unitarian society. It is First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, and it is a humanist congregation. Its ministers are atheist. It is the birthplace of congregational humanism.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Just another little known fact about Minnesota. It is officially the Canadian state of the U.S.
I love it.
You guys are so much like us in that state that we adopted you as the Canadian state that represents us in the U.S.
I love it.
I think Shannon Q's sister's in the chat now. There's somebody called Kathleen Q.
I think I know who that is.
So glad y'all chose Minnesota.
Yeah. That might be someone that might have made this for me. I have yeah. It's just that's the thing that happened is we were able to move from a state where we couldn't find connections with people, right? Because we were atheist. And I knew there were a lot of atheists, and there's some amazing people there, Seth Andrews and so many other groups down there. And you talk about the atheist community of Austin and the work that they're doing just, south of where we are living. But for us, we were still very much still tied into, that's where we lost our faith, but we were still tied into the church groups. We were still tied into the relationships with the community down there and some of the stuff along those lines. So the move allowed us to create this delineation line for moving forward. And we found our community at First Unitarian Society, which fun known fact here. So you talk about me starting with Ken Ham, right? First Unitarian got their start in 1881 as a Darwin reading group.
Really?
Yes.
This I did not know.
Yes.
Wow.
So the First Unitarian Society started their this whole group and this whole organization as a Darwin reading group. And so you go from me going with Ken Ham and the belief systems and locked into creationism to now being actually at the congregation or the work front, which was started basically on reading Darwin's works and putting those together. And then this place was a place for congregational humanism. John Dietrich was from there. And so you had, how do we actually do these things? And so it built a lot of connections and forefronts.
That's amazing. That's awesome too. And you got a lot of representation here in the chat.
I love it.
Saying hi.
I love it. They're amazing people, let me tell you. Which is why I do what we do. So yeah, that's where we got. We got to Minnesota. We're there, and I am still dealing with the blood pressure problems. I'm still dealing with all the stuff, and I hit 38, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I finally said, and you talk about trans representation, right? Which is so important, right? As a kid, the only connection I had was, number one, the church telling me that people part of the LGBT community were evil, or porn.
Right.
Right? Right? That's what I had. It was either this or this, and neither of those things are me.
Yeah.
And how do you draw the connections between that, right? You had trans people being portrayed as evil characters in movies. You had them treated in horrific ways. So by that point, we had media representation. We had people that were actually out there. It was amazing to watch watch some of the ACA shows and see trans representation right on their show.
Yep.
Yeah. And how do you actually connect with this? And realizing, oh, wow, yeah, that's me. And I can actually step forward. And I talked to my partner after a year.
I sleeping at the wheel again.
It is. It's good. So it's quite interesting because, I listened to, the former narrative that I had, right? That these people, you talk about from the evangelical right, talking about they're going to force this on kids. They're going to do all these things. Here I am, an adult. Here I am going through therapist upon therapist to get transgender care and to get taken care of. And it took me over a year to even get through the system and to get through things. And that should not be the case. But it did. And I had to get vetted by 2 therapists. I had to get letters from 2 therapists to be able to go onto HRT. I had to get a full psychiatric workup and everything along those lines to move forward.
Is that standard? Like, is that sort of the norm for folks that do want to go down that route? Or
we're hoping that we change the system. That's the way it was. And it's better. There are doctors, there's a lot of stuff that changes in the system. But if you're like going to, at least when I did it, I was put through the rigmarole by my both the endocrinologist and the pharmacist, as well as then my therapist, and then a psychologist that I had to go through to get all of it. I had to get all the papers, and I had to prove it.
Were they all believers, if I had asked?
They weren't Christian. That was probably one of the best things that we ever did, was stop going to Christian counselors.
Oh, yeah. No kidding. Because they're not going to give you the right advice. I like how Tons of Mice just threw a Q on the end of his name, too. And he said, and earlier he said, you knew it was bound to happen.
Oh, it was absolutely.
Tons of Mice is our source for entertainment here. Pretty much.
Awesome.
And Kathleen Q says that I need to come visit and live and in person at First Unitarian Society. Yeah, when the borders open, there's a lot of travel I got to do. I'm supposed to be speaking at this year's Faithless Forum in Austin, so
I still want to go to that. By the way,
I'm supposed to be a presenter. Like Thomas keeps sending me emails like, "So you're going to be able to make it?" I'm like, "I'm not sure, man. I don't know if the borders are going to be open."
Yeah,
we've opened them to U.S. people coming in, even for pleasure. As long as they have the passport,
the documentation.
It's not really a passport, but it's documentation of vaccination, right? And hopefully they'll do the same in the U.S. because I've got mine. Hell, I even what do you call it? We use the plastic coating to seal it. What they call laminated. Mm-hmm. I laminated mine. I could just go, here you go, and then show them my ID at the same time, and I'm going to Texas.
So back, you get a year through it. I get on HRT. Let's talk about blood pressure, right? We talk about, the change and the transformation. So as a kid, I dealt with a scream, and I don't know how to describe the words, but ever since I started getting tea in the system, I had this fuzz. And you can talk to some of the trans people if you know that, trans people, and some of them will tell you that they had this fuzz, this scream in your head. Mm-hmm. And, getting on E, my blood pressure dropped to 1. I'm right now 120, 180, sitting around. This morning was 118 over 75.
That's a little bit more to the norm.
Yeah. It literally within less than a month of getting on estrogen.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, it completely changed. So they had me on so many heart medications. I was constantly taking them and I could not get off of them. And getting on E changed everything. when you're born trans, your body is set up in a specific biological pattern that is specifically designed for that. Now, that's not always the case. Trans people have a wide spectrum all across the board. And so I want to be very careful to make sure that we validate all identities in that space. But those people who dealt with some of the stuff that I'm talking about here, that's how they were, that's what we deal with. And getting on E changed everything. The depression went away. The suicidal ideations went away, and it allowed me to connect with who I am, which really gets into that A. And I see the time, and I want to make sure to be also cognizant. So, the A, I decided to actually deal something with it. And right where the A is on my arm right here is where I cut it into my arm. And
so that's a brilliant idea. Yeah, you can pull up the picture like you did before if you like. Makes it a little easier to see. There you go.
Yeah. So I worked with a tattoo artist here in Minneapolis, and we put this whole sucker together. The A covers exactly where the scar was as a kid, where I carved the A into my arm. And now I take this symbol, right? I took this mark of pain, of anguish, and of shame, right, that I hid. And all the time, who I was kept seeping through the cracks of that mark, kept seeping out. But I couldn't let it do it. And so I would cut it back and I would deal with it and deal with that. But now I've embraced who I am. I've accepted it. And I don't wear a mark anymore. I wear a symbol. I wear a symbol of pride that took me from a life where I was ready. I had no purpose and no drive and no desire to live, to an alive. And it comes out of that A. It comes out of that shame. It comes out of that connection. I now have that purpose and I have that connection, and it is me. And it has changed everything. And it has brought me together. I have a much deeper connection with my partner than I ever did. I have a much deeper connection with my kids than I ever did. Because now I can actually see a life, and I can see a life past 40. I can see a life past 35. I can see a life past 40, and I can see a life past, into my 80s and 90s. Here I am excited about it.
Yeah,
it changes everything.
You're making me cry, Justice. It's amazing. No, it's true. This is a story that has a victory ending, in my opinion. You overcame all of that, and you found your way clear of fallacious, nonsensical beliefs that were literally harming you, and you were able to make connections with people that you may not have been able to, with good people as well, because I could see them in the chat.
I love them all.
Yeah, and relationships, with your immediate family grew stronger. And so, if I was wearing a hat, I'd take it off and say hats off to you. But kudos to you for all of that. That is absolutely amazing. I know my producer may want to have or might have some questions, so I'll ask him to jump in, because I'm sure that he's got some stuff he wants to know too. And then you can, wrap up your story. And thanks, brother.
I got more.
Yeah, I got a bunch too, but they're all in storage.
So I did want to say, it's the din. And I think that's something I really want to talk with you about, Neil, is the din. The din of conversation. Because that's what it was. 8 years of struggling through whether I believed or not, trying to find the stuff. It was the people. It was the connections. It was people like you. It was people like Paula Gia. It was people like Shannon Q, who helped me start to put things together. And it was those underlying din, the din in the coffee shop, that little back in the background. It's not that one conversation that changes your mind. It's the constant conversation that you listen to and you can hear, and then you can start to put things together and understand it, which is why what you do is so, so important. I want you to hear that, and I deeply appreciate you, Neil.
Oh, I appreciate that. And it makes me feel good that at least what I'm doing is being appreciated and has some positive effect on the community around me. So thank you for that. Erica's like, Naruto? Yes. We have a Naruto fan. Or Naruto. It depends on, I don't know how you want to pronounce it.
We just had this beautiful Kodak moment, and here you go, mispronouncing the names of anime to my face. Oh, it hurt.
Don't get Erica going on it. Oh boy, Neil, you're in for it now. Oh boy, she's gonna come out of the other room.
My very first girlfriend on Earth's name was Erica. She was so nice to me, and she picked me for dodgeball, and she liked horses.
I love it.
That's all I really remember.
You got picked for dodgeball. That's the big thing. And then you were murdered, right? Everyone was whipping the ball at you.
I was very short growing up, and I was
Oh.
still skinny. So, yeah, I was zipping and zapping all over the place. Good luck hitting me with the ball. Good luck.
Did you have anything you wanted to ask, Justin?
I have some notes here. You know, I just like to listen.
I love it, Mikey.
One thing that I wrote down here is that being the best person ever at 13 is a big ask. Like what tremendous pressure to put on. It's like, I have to be the best. It's like, that is the most impossible thing now. And I have a fucking full-time job. Imagine trying to do this shit on allowance. It's got to be impossible. And what's because you were talking about your partner, and you guys seem to have like a very strong synergistic kind of relationship. What's the one piece of advice one piece of advice you would give for people starting new relationships?
Yeah, good question.
That's of course hard because I don't know if I fit the standard queue of what everyone else does or thinks.
You are two people that clearly are in love, and that's the basis that we have for a relationship of that style. So,
well, the best
maintaining relationships that they're already in, or
yeah.
The thing that's kept us together isn't all the other stuff. It's literally been the factor that we're best friends, right?
Yeah.
Because the trans stuff kept everything else pretty bad, without going into like really details of that. I guess that's after show talk, but it really kept other things in a very, it didn't, the Christian view didn't work. The other stuff didn't work. But the two of us were friends. The two of us were connected in a way that we sought each other out, and we were honest with each other. And while we hid a lot of stuff, specifically towards the beginning of our relationship, because we kept trying to be the perfect, Christian couple,
sure, which is understandable.
Right.
Opening up and being honest saved our marriage and saved our connection, and we're able to work through this, right? And we're able to actually deal with what does it mean to be trans in a relationship? What does that mean for your partner? How do you stay together in those situations? Right, when everything changes, and the reason we stay together is we're best friends.
Let me tell you about my best friend. If you
and Eric is absolutely right. I need to hear. You need to put that up again. I need that. That's clear. Yeah. You need a therapist.
Yeah, your pastor is not a therapist,
and your pastor is not a therapist at all.
No,
please, God.
More of a counselor. No, not even a. Here's one last one. What's the one piece of tech you miss the most that they don't make anymore?
The one piece of tech.
Well, since you're into the whole tech and data,
what's one thing you're like, I wish they still made these?
You got me. So I loved playing with the Atari and the old PlayStations. The Suikoden game line was my absolute favorite, and so the factor that I couldn't play Suikoden after what was it, 2003, 2004, it was just absolutely devastating. I still have them, and I've looked them up on eBay, and if I sold my copies, it's like a couple $100, and I just like
What, you can't play them?
You can if you buy another PlayStation from the way back in the day, but they don't work on new systems.
No.
Not even the new PS5?
I've never been able to get any of that shit to work.
Oh.
I think the PS5 can only play games from PS3 and up.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, double bummer.
But one of the things you got to also know, which is like I was not in tech. Like literally, I didn't start my tech career till 2007, 2008. So,
and what's your on your little workstation over there? That was what I was going to ask you before we went live, but we didn't have enough time. AKA, I forgot. So what you tinkerings with?
Oh, over there?
Yeah, on the red orange thing.
That right there is an Arduino kit that I've been working on putting together. It's one of the back projects that I was doing with my kids. The computer the computer back there is what I'm putting together for actual more streaming like this. So at some point we need to talk about that.
A what kit? Arduino?
Arduino. Yeah.
What is that?
Arduino is, well, I don't want to, well, we can pull it out, but you get this little board right here. I'm not going to pull it out of the case. That's actually not the right board. I'm now talking too much out of, I get, this is what happens when I start talking. Don't get me too deep into tech. I'll get lost in it. Yeah. So this is an Arduino right here. And what I use with that is it has a microcontroller on it, and it's a really, 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 really cheap and functional board. So I use it for building pretty much anything and everything that I want to play with. And you can do that. It's the same thing with the Raspberry Pis. I've got like 6 Raspberry Pis sitting on my desk over here.
So it's like,
yeah, it's nerdy shit.
Fun nerdy shit, though. Some blast from your past there, Mikey.
I love it.
Why do I say words?
Well, you know, Tons By's gonna jump all over.
This is gonna be from now on. This is gonna be the Penn and Teller Act, and I'm just gonna shave a little bald spot and just pantomime.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys say we wrap this up and jump into the after party? And anyone that's in the chat right now that would like to be a part of the after party, Kyle, just before we do that real quick there, Kyle Brewer is in the chat. And I recently, because I've been meaning to actually for a little while to message Kyle and ask him to come on and share his story as well. So hopefully I'll hear back from him saying, I'm into it. And then we'll book a date and it'll be great because Kyle's awesome. But anyways, yes, like I was saying, if you'd like to join the after party, there is a link below in the description box if you want to just hang out in the chat, or you can let myself or my producer here, Mr. Mikey, know via Facebook or Twitter by sending us a message, and we'll give you a link, and you can jump right in there with us. Yeah.
What I would say is I hope to, if I can, I'd love to talk to you about what the Deconversion actually means and how we do these things from a secular perspective of amplifying your voice and other people's voices.
Sure. We could talk a little bit
I'd love to ask that question, if it's all right.
I thought at first, the first 3 times she said that, I thought she was saying the bin. I was like, do what with the bin?
The din.
We don't talk about that. The din.
Yeah. The din, raising the din on the noise as how you change the noise from what we get on radio stations like, Glenn Beck and so many others. Replacing it with Neil.
What's your I forgot, the Glenn Beck thing had me cracking up. I was like, oh my God, I forgot about Glenn Beck. Yeah. What's your favorite worst thing that he's done?
Well, I used to listen to him back in 2003. Way before he went off the rails and went crazy. And he was actually quite interesting. He did all sorts of crazy shit, calling George Bush out during that period of time and really labeled the Republicans as real assholes and really put them down back in there. And then he found his cash cow and the language completely changed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I used to be conservative. People know that. Between Glenn Beck, Michael Medved, they were like all like 3 or 4 guys that were all on every single network, no matter where you were in the country. I always get my news, got to stay on top of things. I was like, now I'm looking back, I'm like, that was dogma. That was just dogma being broadcasted through the air magically. Ugh.
Magic. All right. Well, this is sort of stuff we can be talking about in the after party. We'll definitely bring that up in the conversation because I think lots of people might have an opinion on that for sure. But yeah, as I said before, don't forget that there is a link below for the after party. If you'd like to be involved, you can get in touch with Mikey and myself, and we will get you a link, and you can jump in with us. Just send us a DM or PM or mess. You know the routine. Don't forget that Randolph and myself, Randolf Richardson, who's the president of Canadian Atheists, and myself are starting up our own call-in show at some point in the future after the studio is finished being built, called True North Talk. And if you want to learn more about it, you can head over to www.truenorthtalk.ca, and it'll have the link to the channel, which you can hit and be notified the moment we go live. And myself and a whole bunch of other really great people are new co-hosts, sneak that coins in, new co-hosts of the revamped and relaunched Nonprofits, which is an ACA product that airs at 3 p.m. Central between Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Head over there and subscribe so you don't miss an episode of that as well. I'm sort of talking with Andy right now. It may or may not continue, but there are a bunch of episodes up there that we were doing called Atheist Drinking Out Loud, which was usually run on the last Saturday of every month at 2 p.m. over on Andy's channel, Laughing in Disbelief. So head over there and check out the episodes that we do have there, because they're a lot of fun. And we had some great guests with us, like Mikey here and Bionic Dance and Nick Suter and many others. Jay Burrell, who's a comic strip artist, atheist. He's a lot of great people. It's a lot of fun. They'll probably continue because I'm really good at talking people into doing stuff. So, so we'll look for that over there. So head over and sub to Andy. He also puts out some great shows as well. And yes, my patrons, we have gained a new patron just recently.
Bill.
So yes, Bill Castle is the newest patron. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all you do. Every little bit helps keep me going. Yeah, except when I can't get people scheduled, and then I'm like, fuck, now what do I do? But yeah, so far so good. I got lots of spots open in September, guys, and I'll be booking for October soon. So if you guys do have a story and you want to tell it, you know where to go. You can give me a little knock on my message box and or send me an email.
Be waiting for you.
Oh, God damn it. Now that's stuck in my head. My email is also linked below. So you can send me an email if you do want to jump in with me and have a conversation. Thanks, everyone in the side chat. You guys are always amusing and a source for, a lot of fun stuff there, especially when you change your last name to Q. Tons of mice Q.
I gotta get him a heavyweight belt.
Yeah, I know, right? People might think that that's a Star Trek reference, which isn't a bad thing, but all right, so we're going to jump into the after party real soon. We usually take a bit of a break, so we'll probably get her going sometime around 6:30. We should be going live. So we'll take a little bit of a break here so I can refill my drink and grab a beer and a little snacky snack and quick smoke, and then we'll come back in and once we've gathered everyone, once we've wrangled all the cats, we'll put them together and we'll go live. All right. So like I always say at the end of the interviews, first again, Justice, thank you for being an amazingly awesome guest with me tonight. Pleasure having you so much. You're very welcome. And until next time, guys, like I always say at the end of the interviews, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. We'll see you guys next time.
What's on